And when we shake up racial discrimination, we are expanding God's kingdom on earth. What's up, my name is Christian. Welcome back to my channel where I make content about mental health and social issues, all from a biblical perspective to help you heal, grow, and make an impact on your community and the world as Christ intended. So this video is probably going to make a decent amount of the people watching it a bit uncomfortable for different reasons. And it's not just because we're going to discuss racism, and it's not just because we're going to discuss how to approach racism biblically, but also we're going to discuss how each and every one of us, no matter who you are or who you come in contact with, plays a role, and how we can each play a role in dismantling racism. And let me just add that we each play a role regardless of the color of our skin. So before we dive deep into discussing racism or diving into how we can dismantle racism or anything like that, we have to set the foundation that racism is sin. I feel like it is really easy for us to gloss over racism or see it as something bad that's in the world, but a lot of us don't attach the word sin to the word racism. And we should take it seriously just as any other sin because one, it is an insult to God's handiwork and it contradicts the gospel message itself. And because it is sin, it is imperative that Jesus' name is in the midst of it in order for us to have true reconciliation, in order for it to truly be healed. Policies and things like that are great, and they've been instrumental in the progress of not just civil rights in here in the United States, but globally. But the root of racism isn't policy. The root of it is the heart of man, the evil that's in the heart of man, and the only thing that can solve that is Jesus Christ. Now, the first thing that all of us can do, regardless of the color of your skin, in order to combat racism, is actually just being quiet and listening, and especially listening to the groups of people that have been hurt by racism. But let's be honest. Listening can be a little bit of an ambiguous term, right? A lot of us can think listening is just not talking and just hearing what someone else is saying. But that's not really it. We can break listening down into three steps. The first step is stepping out of your own world. The second step being stepping into someone else's world. And the third step is receiving what that person has to say and leaving with that information. A personal example I have of this is that I've had conversations with friends and coworkers about racism, right? And they did leave that conversation changed with understanding things differently and having something to even think about. But that required them stepping outside of what they thought to be true, stepping outside of their own worldview and stepping into my shoes as a black man in America. And then not just doing that, but also being able to leave with that information and chewing on it, letting it digest. When there's active and true listening, there's work being done on both sides by the person speaking, by the person relaying information, and by the person receiving that information as well. And this listening doesn't just apply to people, let's say white people, listening to people of color about racism. People of color also should listen as well, because I know it is very easy to get really angry and to get really hot when you see racism, right? But when we learn to listen, we can start to understand the roots of racism, and we can start to understand why certain things came about. And then once we understand why certain things have become about, we can do more than just pick out the fruit of racism. We can actually destroy it from the root. And the way we go by doing that is by challenging it with love. In 1 Peter 4:8, it says, "Above all, keep loving one another earnestly, since love covers a multitude of sins." In all ways, no matter how racism presents itself, we should be challenging it with love, whether it's something big and overt or something small and covert, like something your coworker, or family, or friend says. And here's the thing, we shouldn't just challenge it with sharp rebuke, but we should also challenge it with words of wisdom. Take action. This is when we could take the anger, the hatred, the division, the pain that racism has caused and does still cause in this world and turn it into something even better. Change. But you may be thinking, okay, you say challenge it with love, but what does it actually mean? What does it even look like? I've never done this before. I want to do something against racism. An example of something that I personally have done is simply asking someone why or what do they mean by a certain comment. Because what often happens is that when certain racist comments or certain things, we come into certain situations where there is racism, what will often happen is that the other party will feel uncomfortable and then it'll kind of just be swept under the rug. But when we confront it, right, when we ask why or ask the person to explain what they mean, then we can start opening up a dialogue about what that comment means and the deeper roots of it. And not just this, we can start opening other people's eyes to certain things that they don't realize is racist or they don't realize is deeply rooted in racism. And honestly, one of the most important things, but probably the hardest things for, I would say, especially for my viewers who are people of color and have had some really bad experiences with racism, is to seek some sort of reconciliation. And when we seek reconciliation, we are exercising what the gospel message actually truly is, right? Like God reconciling himself with mankind. We can reconcile ourselves with our fellow man, even if we had some racist experiences. Now, let me just be clear. This isn't to say that we are to put ourselves in danger. This isn't to say we are to become doormats. And this isn't to say that we are to ignore certain comments. Because truly, if we want racism to be obliterated, right? If we want racism to be diminished and the power of racism to be diminished, we have to realize that in order for that to happen, there are going to be racist people that we're going to have to meet with love. And when that change occurs, that's when we get to see the love of Christ in action. And we get to see the world truly change. And when we shake up racial discrimination, we are expanding God's kingdom on earth. Just to wrap up, I would just want to say that when it comes to racism, this is something I can talk about for hours. And because there's so many different angles that we can come at this with. Whether it be racism in the church or racism, within family and friends, covert racism, overt racism, there's so much that we can discuss. But I wanted this video just to be something very simple, very light, of the person just wanting to, they see racism out there and they're like, what can I possibly do? Because I had that same mentality. But that's all I got for y'all for today. If you did enjoy this kind of content, please leave a comment down below. Let me know. Even any critiques, things like that. I would love any kind of critiques or anything like that you have down. You can leave for me down below in the comments. And also, while you're down there, please be sure to check out my clothing brand. My IMC's list is down below. I have it linked down below in the description. It is a mental health clothing brand rooted in Christ, of course. And 10% of each purchase actually goes to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. The first thing that I have out right now is the Jesus Wept hoodie, and in the back it says "Real Men Cry," to speak against the stigma regarding men's mental health and things like that. And for more content like this, be sure to subscribe and like the video if you did enjoy it. And the question I have for y'all to really have a dialogue is, how do you view racism as a Christian? How is you being a Christian change your perspective on racism? Because I know for me, it's changed it a lot. And above all that, remember, you got this because God's got you. Peace out.